I didn't cry when the door slammed behind him. I didn't scream or beg or even blink. I just stood there, staring at the spot where he'd dropped the glass. Wine still oozed across the tile, red like blood, spreading slowly, methodically. Kind of like him. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. I used to think monsters had claws or fangs or came at you in the dark. But the real ones, they wake you up with coffee. They know your favorite brand of toothpaste. They smile at your parents. They tuck you in with promises. And then, they take their time unmaking you. His name was Andrew Blake. To the world he was polished, composed, brilliant. He spoke at seminars, wrote opinion columns, hosted fundraisers in our backyard for campaigns he didn't even believe in. Everyone loved Andrew. Everyone except the version of me that only existed behind closed doors. To most people I was Andrew's wife, which was just another way of saying I was nobody important. They didn't see the times he froze me out for days because I didn't laugh at the right joke. Or when he'd call me a parasite with dead eyes, then kiss my forehead for a dinner party 5 minutes later. They didn't see the strategic apologies, or how he never hit me, because he didn't have to. Andrew could kill with silence. And silence was the one weapon I never knew how to fight. Until I learned how to use it. Started 2 years ago. The night he came home late again, smelling like citrus and arrogance. I was sitting on the couch, waiting not for him but for confirmation. He dropped his keys in the bowl, looked at me like I was furniture, and started peeling off his suit jacket. "Don't wait up next time," he muttered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because buried beneath the throw pillow was a tiny black device. Smaller than a pen cap. Recording. Always recording. The idea had come to me months earlier, after a brutal argument where he accused me of being paranoid, mentally unstable, and a burden to his career. The next day, he bought me flowers and posted a picture of us smiling at brunch. I stared at the photo that afternoon, barely recognizing the woman beside him. My face had practiced that smile so many times it had forgotten how to mean it. That was the moment something broke. Not my heart. No, that had been gone long ago. What broke was my compliance. I began reading, researching, listening to podcast interviews with women who'd escaped coercive control. And then I stumbled across an interview with a lawyer who mentioned that emotional abuse cases rarely hold in court, unless you have recorded proof. So I bought my first microphone. Started small. The mic lived inside a tissue box in the kitchen, then one behind the bookshelf, another in the car, one in my purse, always labeled innocuously, always hidden in plain sight. Every fight, every comment, every lie, captured in perfect crisp detail. At night, while he snored beside me, I'd upload the files and label them. I had folders organized by tone. Gaslighting mild. Gaslighting explicit. Asset threats. Public reputation manipulation. Evidence of infidelity. Professional misconduct. It was methodical. It was slow. It was survival. People ask, why didn't you just leave? They don't know what it's like to stand in a house you built with a man who tore you down brick by brick. They don't understand how someone can convince you you're worthless while smiling with you in Christmas cards. And they certainly don't understand how a man like Andrew Blake, charming, connected, and beloved, could turn an entire courtroom against you with a single well-timed smirk. But I understood. So I prepared. I waited until I had 2 years of recordings. I consulted a discreet legal advisor under a pseudonym. And then I filed for divorce. It wasn't dramatic. No final showdown. No shouting. I simply sent him the papers by courier while he was at a gala. He returned home the next morning and sat across from me at the table like we were co-workers discussing a calendar event. "You're serious," he said, no anger, just curiosity. "Yes." He leaned back, evaluating me like I was a stranger. "Well, good luck convincing anyone I was the problem." Then he smirked. "You'll look crazy without evidence." I just nodded. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of filings, delays, and media whisperings. Andrew went on a quiet PR campaign, painting himself as the devastated husband whose mentally unstable wife had abandoned the marriage. He even suggested I might be on medication or suffering from delusions. His lawyer implied I'd cheated, claimed I'd been overspending. The judge seemed polite but skeptical. Andrew's reputation worked harder than any of his attorneys ever could. People stopped answering my calls. A few friends disappeared overnight. And still I said nothing, because I knew something they didn't. The recordings weren't just about the abuse. They were also about what Andrew wasn't supposed to say out loud. Like the fake invoices he had created to siphon money from a campaign fund, or the way he spoke about certain clients in language that would get any professional disbarred. I had the receipts, and I had one plan left. The final hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Monday. That morning I woke up before the sun. I made coffee the way I used to, 2 sugars, extra cinnamon. I took a long shower, ironed my outfit, and put on the necklace my mother gave me before she passed. And then I walked into the courtroom alone. No lawyer, no entourage, no makeup artist, just me. And one envelope. Andrew's side chuckled when they saw me. His lawyer leaned in and said something that made him laugh under his breath. Even the clerk looked at me like I'd walked into the wrong building. I stood there, back straight, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Carter, are you choosing to represent yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor. I have something I'd like to submit before we begin." And then I stepped forward, hands trembling but purposeful, and placed the envelope gently on the bench. The envelope wasn't thick, just a few sheets of paper and a tiny silver USB drive tucked inside. But you'd think I had placed a live grenade on the judge's bench by the way Andrew's lawyer stiffened. The judge peered over her glasses at me, then glanced at the bailiff. "You're aware this hearing was scheduled for final arguments?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "This is my final argument." She opened the envelope. Her eyes moved quickly over the first page, a typed summary of what was included on the drive. Timestamps, transcriptions, and context notes. The kind of document that lawyers usually bill $300 an hour to produce. I had written it at my kitchen table over 4 sleepless nights, drinking black tea and listening to my own voice echo from years of humiliation. The judge tilted her head. "These are audio files." "Yes, ma'am. Private recordings. Over 200 hours of content collected across 2 years." She raised an eyebrow. "And you're submitting this now because the truth wasn't loud enough without proof." Andrew looked amused. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms and smirked. "Your Honor," his lawyer interjected, already rising, "we object to any late submission of unverified digital media. These could be fabricated, out of context, or illegally obtained." "They're legal," I cut in. Fedi. One-party consent state. And everything was recorded in locations where I was present. The judge motioned for silence. "Let me be the one to determine admissibility, Counselor." She slipped the USB into a laptop brought over by the clerk. The room was quiet, too quiet. Andrew's smirk had dimmed slightly, his posture tightening just a bit. And then, the audio began to play. Audio clip number 34, timestamped. March 17th, 9:43 p.m. Andrew's voice was unmistakable, confident, measured, cruel. "Why would I need you to work? I make enough for both of us. What you do is irrelevant. Honestly, if you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would notice for weeks." The courtroom shifted. Few gasped. The judge didn't flinch. Audio clip number 49, timestamped. June 2nd, 7:21 p.m. "You're lucky I let you stay here. You're not my equal, Mia. You're an accessory. And when you start acting like more than that, it embarrasses me." Andrew's lawyer objected again, citing emotional manipulation and irrelevance. The judge waved her off. "Let it play." The room transformed with every clip. Some were quiet, just whispers of threats. Some were loud, slamming doors, broken plates, snarling insults that no loving partner would ever dare say out loud. And in the middle of it all, always my voice. Subdued, hesitant, apologetic. Until it wasn't. By the time we reached the final section, the temperature in the courtroom had dropped by 10 degrees. Then came the recording Andrew hadn't seen coming. Audio clip number 114, timestamped. November 9th, 11:38 p.m. Andrew laughing. Of course I padded the invoice. Who cares? They're not going to audit someone with my face on the charity banner. Female voice, muffled, maybe his assistant. Isn't that illegal? Andrew casually. Only if someone's dumb enough to record it. The entire room held its breath. And then, for the first time that day, Andrew spoke. That's taken out of context. His voice was sharp but unconvincing. The judge gave him a withering look. Would you like to clarify your own words, Mr. Blake? He glanced at his lawyer, who whispered furiously into his ear. But the damage was done. I watched as the power drained from his face. That famous composure cracked like thin glass. He looked around the courtroom, searching for support, only to find the eyes of strangers silently condemning him. This was no longer a custody battle. It was something else. The judge called a 30-minute recess to review the remaining content and legal implications. I stepped outside into the hallway. The noise of the courthouse returned. Phones ringing, shoes squeaking, someone laughing far off. But right there in that hallway, Andrew followed me. For the first time in years, he looked small. You really recorded all of that? He asked. He nodded. And you waited until now to use it? Yes. He stared at me like I was a stranger. You set me up. I met his eyes. No, you set yourself up. I just stopped pressing mute. Back inside, the judge returned looking solemn. She adjusted her papers, then addressed the court. The court has reviewed the submitted materials. What was initially framed as a contested divorce has now revealed potential financial fraud, coercive control, and a pattern of psychological abuse. Andrew's lawyer tried to interrupt. The court will be referring relevant recordings to the district attorney's office. Further, we will be revisiting the terms of spousal support and asset division. Effective immediately. Andrew's face drained of all color. Later that afternoon, while filing paperwork in the lobby, a woman I didn't know approached me. She wore a gray blazer and carried a leather-bound portfolio. I'm from the DA's office. If you're willing to talk, we'd like to open an inquiry into your husband's campaign fund mismanagement. Blink. You believe me. She smiled. We heard you. But what mattered most wasn't what the judge heard. It wasn't even what the courtroom heard. It was what I heard, when I listened to those tapes over and over. The sound of a woman being erased. And then the sound of her slowly coming back. I didn't sleep the night after the hearing. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally wasn't. It's strange how silence feels different when you've taken control of it. When you've lived for years walking on eggshells, quiet becomes a weapon you fear. But once you stop tiptoeing, once you plant your feet, it becomes armor. Andrew's reputation didn't collapse in a day. It fractured in stages. Stage 1, the court's ruling. The judge ordered a new division of assets, granting me full ownership of our home, a substantial portion of Andrew's investment accounts, and monthly spousal support, citing the years of documented coercion. But more than that, she wrote a personal note in the official transcript. That emotional abuse carries weight when accompanied by proof. And I had delivered that proof with surgical precision. Stage 2, the media leak. 2 days after the court ruling, someone at the courthouse leaked a redacted portion of the recordings. I hadn't intended for it to go public, but once it did, there was no turning back. Clips of Andrew mocking women's advocacy groups. Jokes about manipulating donors. References to clients who were now reviewing their contracts with fresh eyes and clenched jaws. It was wildfire, and Andrew was dry grass. Stage 3. The investigation. The district attorney's office formally launched an inquiry into Andrew's financial activities, especially surrounding the charity fund. The assistant he'd flirted with in the recordings agreed to cooperate. She wasn't loyal, just afraid. And once she realized the tides were turning, she jumped ship with a memory stick of her own. But the final stage was mine alone. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need to see him in prison. I just wanted to live without walking on a floor full of glass shards, pretending not to bleed. 6 months later, I moved into a small apartment overlooking the park. It wasn't fancy. The walls were too thin. The water pressure was mediocre. But it was mine. No one belittled me if I left a dish in the sink. No one made passive-aggressive comments about how I dressed. No one told me I was invisible. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible at all. One afternoon, while organizing files on my laptop, I came across the folder. Flash voices, hundreds of audio clips, hundreds of hours of pain. But I didn't delete it. I renamed it. /The Evidence of Becoming. Because those tapes weren't just about what Andrew said. They were about how I stopped shrinking. How I stopped editing myself mid-sentence. How I started answering instead of apologizing. And how silence became my rebellion. He tried to call once. Block number. Voicemail only. You didn't have to destroy me. You could have just left. Now no one wants to work with me. You made your point. I hope it was worth it. I didn't respond. Because here's the thing. I didn't destroy him. I just stopped protecting the version of him he worked so hard to sell. A month later, I was invited to speak at a women's advocacy panel. They wanted me to talk about legal resilience, emotional recovery, and the power of documentation. I almost declined. But then I thought of every woman sitting in a dark room, wondering if she's crazy, wondering if the words hurting her actually matter, wondering if anyone would ever believe her if she told the truth. So I accepted. That night, I stood on a stage with shaking hands and a soft voice. The auditorium was full, but I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at the microphone. Black, cold. And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless around it. I leaned in, cleared my throat, and began. They laughed when I walked into the courtroom alone. But they didn't realize I'd been preparing for years. They didn't hear what I'd been recording. And they never expected that when the silence finally spoke, it would scream. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.